If we can, let's go ahead and change gears here for a little bit slightly. One of the reasons that I really wanted to reach out to your development company specifically was because of how you guys treat your employees. And with all the media coverage surrounding Telltale and Rockstar, and just what's been going on with development companies in general, developing games and then laying off their employees and stuff like that.
I guess we'll start off. I found some old posts of yours on a website called Game Sutra.
Gamasutra, yeah, okay.
And
yeah, you found some of my old comments on some of these. Yeah, okay. Carry on.
Well, you kind of. I mean, I don't want to say it's not. I guess it's not. I don't see it as a rant if you agree with it. So I'm not gonna say that's what it was.
Yeah, I've done 1 or 2 rants on Gamasutra. Yeah, carry on.
But yeah, I mean, you've kind of commented on how you see some of the development companies treating their employees and how they treat them as consumables. And I was just wondering if you could kind of tell how your company approaches that in a completely opposite way.
Yeah, I think the thing is, before anyone gets the idea that, you know, we're these wonderful altruistic people or anything else like that, none of this is for that reason. It's just that, particularly, I mean, you know, John and myself both had careers before we did this. Bill and Dave had done some work in the games, not huge. And I think both John and I came in particularly with just a basic mindset that says that, you know, being successful in business does not require you to be a dick.
Right.
And you know, I've worked around the tech sector for, you know, well over 30 years now, and yeah, I hate those really trite phrases, but you know, it's that thing that your single biggest asset are the people who work here. You know, so why wouldn't you try and look after everybody?
Right. It's
hard enough to find, you know, the great talent, the really great talent, and to get them to come and work for you and the rest of it. Why would you then treat people? You know, why would you then treat people, let's just be kind and say carelessly? You know, sure, because I think a lot of what goes on isn't done maliciously. I mean, I know I've met people who do it maliciously. And, you know, I will punch them in the face on sight.
Right.
You know, just on principle. But yeah, to some extent, the games industry kind of reminds me of the IT sector when I first started, you know, over 30 years ago, where it was a bunch of techies running companies, a lot of whom were completely unsuited for running companies. They just happened to be there because they kind of created the thing in the first place. So there's a decent chunk of that around. But there's that. You've got those mix of mindsets that, you know, put together badly lead to some horrible results. You know, you've got kind of big corporate mindset where, and I've been there, so I do understand it to some extent, but where you are utterly driven by the shareholders,
right?
And and you forget that the shareholders may be the most obvious stakeholder in your business, but there are other stakeholders, you know, which include, you know, the other people running the company and all your employees, as well as all your customers. And people get, you know, in big corporate will get focused utterly on the number.
Right.
And this is where you see some big companies, you know, there was that rash of it in about 2008-9, flowed over to 2010, I think, where, you know, some of the very big companies were just closing studios all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, we've got what we need out of this. We're no longer printing money, so go shut a few of them. Yeah, and you realize, I mean, I understand from the numbers point of view, I understand it, but all of these things, you know, whether it's just dumping on studios, closing businesses, you know, treating your employees like cattle.
Mm-hmm.
These are, to me, it all smacks of just somewhere between careless, stupid, shoddy management. You know, and frankly, especially, I mean, we're in 2018, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
There is no excuse, none, for those sort of behaviors. I mean, I can understand, you know, You know, you look back at, you know, my home country back in the Industrial Revolution. Yes, we used to have child labor. Yeah, but guess what? We figured out that's actually not a nice thing to do.
Right.
Putting children into factories for 12, 14-hour days at the age of 12. Yeah, no, you have to stop behaving like that.
Right.
As I say, maliciously or otherwise, getting your employees to turn in, as has been described recently, 100-hour weeks.
Right.
Is not a way to treat people. I mean, but even if you're not going to be a nice person, ultimately it is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a 40-hour working week for a reason. And it's not just because some union somewhere went, no, we're not working any more than 40 hours. It's because ultimately, you know, on average, most people can't turn in much more than that,
Yeah.
you know, effectively during a week. Sure, you can do short, sustained bursts, but if you do that, you've got to manage it sensibly. You've got to, you know, if someone's going to work a 100-hour week, and yes, I understand. Yeah, there are moments when it happens. Something goes catastrophically wrong, and someone's got to fix it.
Yeah.
But you've then got to think about, okay, how much damage have we done to this person, this team, and what do we need to do about it? Not, you know, when the project's finished next year, but right now. You know, if someone's churned out a 100-hour week because of something catastrophic, first off, you've got to figure out how to make damn sure that doesn't happen again. So don't put people in the position. And the second is, you know, it's one of the bits that seems to get forgotten on a regular basis. How do we put it right now? You know, if someone's turned in a 100-hour, you know, we do this because we have the situation that, you know, reality says a coder has got a problem that's been nagging for a couple of days. You know, here it is we're at 250 right now. And in a couple of hours' time, maybe a coder somewhere in this building will be going, oh, I've nearly got this. I think I know what to do now.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to keep going for 2 or 3 hours more to nail it.
Right.
And that means they won't get home till 9 o'clock. You know, I understand the mentality. I've been there myself. You know, I want to get this finished. And not because anyone's pressuring me to, but just because I want to get it done. But, you know, we more and more look at this stuff and think, you know, and say to people, look, okay, you stayed in till 9. We don't expect to see you for, you know, be late the next day.
Right.
Take the break, take the rest. You know, because you cannot sustain that sort of pace. I mean, I'm sure there's arguments that say, well, some people can. I'm sure there's some who can, but how long before you burn out?
Yes.
And the problem with all of this is that you don't know where everybody's breaking is. You know, just because someone likes to work long hours doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Right.
We actively discourage people doing it because, again, it just always comes back to that point. It's not sustainable. It is not sustainable for you as an individual. We've always said we're here for the long term. And we kind of realized that actually means, no, it does really mean the long term. You know, not just this week and this month and this year, but for many years. And we want all those employees who want to stay with us for that long to be able to.
Right.
And unless you make the whole business and everything around the business and the people sustainable, you know, you're going to break things. And don't get me wrong. Part of this was driven by the fact that it was around the release of RO2. We famously or infamously, as however you like to look at it, realized that we got ourselves into a corner around that release. And we buried some stupid hours. A lot of us did. And we came out the backside of that with people exhausted, you know, genuinely exhausted. And we realized, John and I probably nearly ended up divorced, not just from each other. And, you know, and we realized that applied to, you know, everybody else in the business that, you know, who we hadn't been forcing them along to do it, but people forget that if that's the way you lead, that's the way you are kind of expecting people to follow.
Right.
You know, it's no good going, oh, well, I don't expect everyone to do what I do. If they see you as, you know, as the leader, as the example, they're going to try and follow. You know, so you've got to be absolutely aware of what you're doing, because it doesn't just apply to you. You know, and at the end of all that, we released the game October of 2011. We actually ended up taking the whole company and families and everything else away on a cruise in the January. A as an apology, and B so we could say we're never going to do this again.
Right.
You know, this is a cycle that we cannot do. It's not. It always comes back to this thing. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the individuals, for the project, for the company, or anything else. And as you can see, you got me off into the 10-minute rant on that topic.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's very important to touch on because, like I said, the media, you know, grabs a hold of something and takes off with it, and you can see that with what happened to Telltale here recently. Sure. But
well, Telltale, and I mean, you look at the Rockstar team. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, and it's very difficult to understand, you know, quite what was going on because you're getting very, very mixed messages. I mean, with some of the others that have come up, you know, about behaviors in companies. Some of it you realize some people have managed to keep a lid on it for a while, and then, you know, a horrible set of behaviors actually becomes public.
Right.
And you know, we've sat down, and you know, our chief admin officer, who's, you know, responsible for HR and everything else, you know, we just said, you look at some of these stories, and we kind of email them around internally and going, that can never be us. We can never be that company. At the end of the day, I think people appreciate working for a company that they believe in, that they can trust, and that's kind of very important to us.